A surprise phone call from Nicola Sturgeon, the Cabinet Secretary for Health, on Tuesday evening well and truly shaped my week when she told me that the Ravenscraig Primary School and the Ladybird Nursery nearby were closing down due to the swine flu outbreak. I was immensely impressed by the reaction of the health authorities and Inverclyde Council, but most of all by the professional attitude of those running our local schools. The professional way that they handled this crisis, their commitment, the reassurance, the confidence that they gave made it much easier for parents to deal with this situation.
Duncan McNeill, followed by Dave Thompson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for a statement today and for personally keeping me up to date with the developments. I would also echo the thanks that has been extended to Glasgow Health Board and Inverclyde Education. I'm sure the Cabinet Secretary would agree that a special praise should go to Ravenscraig Head Teacher Mrs Lynn, the School Secretary Mrs Allen and Julie Douglas for their performance. Their confident leadership has given a great deal of confidence and reassurance to parents and has been recognised by them. Given that we now have a case involving a teenager, what discussion has taken place about further school closures, possibly in the secondary sector, with the Cabinet Secretary for Education in the light of a possible impact on exams? And finally, can the Minister be clear that the appropriate transfer of anti-violence has taken place in order that we recognise the developing situation in the Inverclyde area?
Cabinet Secretary.
Can I thank Duncan McNeill for those questions and join with him in thanking very warmly indeed the staff of both the school, the nursery and indeed the after-school club, who have all behaved very professionally in difficult circumstances, and their contribution has been in no small measure responsible for the smooth way this has all been handled. In terms of Duncan McNeill's questions about contingency arrangements around exams in secondary schools, can I assure him that these are all in hand? Obviously, it's not appropriate for me to go into detail about the personal circumstances of the 16-year-old girl, but obviously, as we understand more about that case, then any necessary action that has to be taken will be taken. But our focus is very much, as it has been for the last fortnight, on containing this as much as possible, and we're in dialogue with all of the relevant people that you would expect us to be in dialogue with around all of these cases.
It wasn't all bad, of course, this week. My week began with the congregation of the Elim Pentecostal Church in Kelly Street, where I celebrated with them 80 years of their history and their service to our community. I also spent some time with Liz McHugh, Victim Support Coordinator here in Inverclyde, and John Muir, the anti-knife campaigner, where we launched our local campaign in support of a Victims Commissioner. And at the Parliament itself, we saw progress being made. For those of us who believe that mandatory minimum sentences should be given to those who take and carry knives and use those knives. And in that sense, we have made some progress this week. Well, the Victims Commissioner, we launched it in the Parliament last week. We were very pleased to be associated with the Victims Commissioner proposed bill. We hope we'll get a lot of support locally, and we hope eventually to see this bill adopted by the Parliament. After all, convicted criminals have a commissioner. It's very important, I believe, that victims should have a commissioner who is able to advocate on their behalf and support victims right across Scotland.
And what about funding? Who's going to underwrite all the additional costs and everything else? And is that coming directly from Parliament?
Well, the Commissioner would be appointed by the Parliament, he'd be interviewed, appointed by the Parliament, and that's one of the benefits. It would be a permanent post, just like the Children's Commissioner, the Information Commissioner, so they would have real standing to make recommendations and campaign and advocate on behalf of victims.
Because we've got to recognise, and we do recognise that Greenock or Inverclyde, we have a definite problem of violence on the streets and violence in sort of domestic side of things as well. Having a victim support office down here is very, very important that continues at the highest possible level, because the service they offer and the service we were offered when we went through our tragedy, that couldn't be better even if we were paying loads and loads of money dosh to get it done.
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the roles that a commissioner could have was to examine how much money is going into the system, because I think progress has been made, John, and we've got, as you rightly pointed out, Liz here and her team at Victim Support do a great job. It's about continuity, it's about continuity of funding, it's about making sure that there's no gaps between the criminal justice system and victim support and the police. All of that work that needs coordinated, and hopefully we can bring a real focus on the victims. And I think last week we had an endorsement from your National Chair of Victim Support who helped launch this last week, Liz.
Well, you know, Victim Support Scotland is already aware of the development that's already been in place, and they're looking at this as a step forward for victims' rights. And also from, you know, our local perspective here, it's enhancing the victim with a voice, most definitely.
Great.